Hey 3DMJers, this is Andrea Valdez and you're listening to the 3D Muscle Journey podcast. This is actually the last episode we will be releasing before taking a month off to gather up our creative juices and come back with a whole new set of episodes in the middle of May 2018. As you all know, as coaches, we believe in preventative deloads to avoid burnout, and we treat this podcast no differently, so we really appreciate your understanding in advance. That said, in the meantime, we'll still be releasing our monthly video course in the 3DMJ Vault during our break, so make sure to sign yourself up as a member so you can get free videos as soon as they come out. To do that, just go to 3dmjvault.com, check out any of our 7 courses that are already there, soon to be 8 courses, and click on either the Enroll for Free button or the Free Trial button, depending on the course. And you'll not only get access to those videos, but you'll also get monthly email notifications when we add more free content. So you can log in and get those goods whenever you want. Again, free instructional videos at 3dmjvault.com. Thank you guys for listening and enjoy the show. Today I'm talking to Eric Helms and Brad Loomis while we compare remote coaching versus in-person coaching. Not gonna lie, y'all, bouncing this conversation off of my fellow coaches was really valuable in clarifying my role and reminding me what I need to pay attention to and ask for as a coach who's not in the gym with my athletes every day. All 3 of us go over our previous careers as in-person trainers and reflect on how useful and beneficial that can be for certain populations or for skill-based activities, including powerlifting and Olympic lifting. You'll hear how we personally prefer to be coached individually and how we recommend our online clients still take advantage of in-person sport-specific professionals in their area as well. So this isn't an either-or conversation really, and I think a lot of you will be surprised, like I was, by how much you can take advantage of all types of coaching at the same time at any point in your career. So, as always, if you have any feedback or comments on this episode, go to 3dmusclejourney.com or to youtube.com/team3dmj and leave it under podcast 90. Let's go ahead and get into it. Please enjoy remote versus in-person coaching with Brad Loomis and Eric Helms. Eric,
Andrea.
when did you... Oh, quit interrupting me. I'm just kidding.
He's responding to you.
I'm just kidding. I interrupt y'all like every 5 minutes in every podcast. All right.
You've
so
never interrupted anyone in your life.
That's actually accurate. Yes.
So,
when did you
Andrea.
start? Damn it!
I was thinking that same thing. Eric, your timing is perfect.
Thank you. Anyway,
Eric, what years did you do in-person personal training? I got it out.
I actually didn't hear part of that question.
Okay.
I heard in-person personal training, but...
Both y'all, shut it. My turn.
Yes. Great start.
All this is staying in, by the way. Okay. So, Eric, I was asking what years you were doing personal training in a gym as a coach. Not like getting training, but doing the...
Yep. So I started personal training in 2005, and I did some personal training-ish stuff in the Air Force. I led the physical conditioning staff, and I was a mentor to people who were having trouble passing the PT test. But I would say I was a personal trainer from 2005 until 2010 in gyms or in studios. And then for 2011, for a bit, I did in-home personal training with like 1 or 2 clients as 3D Muscle Journey was building up before I moved to New Zealand.
Groovy. What about you, Brad?
I started one-on-one personal training / coaching when I opened up my gym, which was 2002. And started just basically training people for free. And then discontinued that in roughly 2012, maybe beginning of 2013.
Oh, wow.
When I
didn't realize.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was short. Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was right around that time. That's right. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
I didn't know you did it till that late.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
And
we
then
used to host seminars and powerlifting meets at his gym.
Yeah, at Healthy Bodies Fitness in Little Portola, California. In fact, our first ever seminar was above the gym in our little conference room in 2000 and was
10.
it 9?
I think it was 10.
Yeah.
Oh, it could have been the very end of 2009. I think it was 2010 though, because I saw the pictures and I was fat. End of 2009, I was so lean.
And it was very cold. I remember all you guys was freezing.
Yep.
And we did a little training at that seminar too. Remember, we'd kind of trained everybody a little bit and put them through circuits and stuff.
Indeed.
I know, Brad, and you coach football now. I just want to get all the coaching years and experiences. So we've done one-on-one for y'all too. And then, Brad, you do football for your son, right? Mm-hmm. Or not currently, but you did.
Yeah, a lot of skills coaching, kind of one-on-one. Not so much weight training or conditioning, strength and conditioning. I should say more skills practice.
One-on-one or with the team?
With the team, yeah.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I can obviously there was a little bit of one-on-one when you take one away, kind of like you do with your gymnastics. You take one away and you work on something a little bit, you know.
Yeah.
Or am I speaking out of turn there?
It's different. Well, I don't know. I would say it's different. Like I've been through football practices. I've seen them sometimes. But what I imagine is the difference is like the closeness and proximity with the athletes and how often that they're like a football team's like a bunch of kids, whereas in gymnastics I usually wouldn't have more than 8 at a time, and I know them very, very, very well because I have them every day. Whereas you probably there's like at least 30 kids, right? Between
20 and 30, yeah.
Okay. And then personal training, I never did full time. I did it like a little bit in college, one-on-one. And then in grad school, I did some in-home, like when I was selling supplements, I would train some of my clients there too, in their houses. And then I did Group X and boot camps and all that stuff too. All through like early 20s.
I did a little bit of group training. I had, I worked at the Y, we had a small, like, beginner weight training class. They had like 3 to 5 people, and I would just take them through how to do basic weight training.
Yeah. And the gymnastics was like a decade. I was like 16 off and on until I was like 16 to like 25 nonstop coaching like full time with the gymnasts, and then I did it a little bit in my late 20s. But
yeah, that was one thing that.
Go ahead, Brad.
Sorry, go ahead, Brad.
I was just going to say that was for about 5 years of my tenure. I taught step aerobics.
Oh,
right. I told you guys that.
No.
I taught aerobics.
I would love to see it.
I forgot about that, but I'm so happy that you reminded us of that again.
Yeah. And I put a little weight training flair on it. You know, we would do about like 30 seconds to a minute of step, you know, and then we get out a dumbbell and we do like sumo deadlifts with the dumbbell standing on end, and then we take a break and then we do more steps. So yeah, that was my own little version of step aerobics.
Do we have videos?
You did body pump before body pump existed. Basically.
Pretty much.
Well, I don't know. Have you seen a body pump class? I'm pretty impressed with body pump. I'm just saying compared to
Like, I mean, you know, I have, but I don't know. I haven't seen it like in the last since I worked in the commercial gym. So
yeah, no. When I worked at the YMCA, my roommate used to teach body pump classes. I was impressed with it. It's like, this is kind of weight training. I mean, it is weight training, but like if all the ladies that would do the step aerobics and the Zumba, like it's a good in betweener, I guess, too. Because they're all scared of weights, but they have like little baby weights, baby barbells in the body pump. So anyways.
Yeah. When you're doing like an hour of continuous movement, they kind of have to be baby weights, I guess. So.
Well, but they're baby barbells. I think it's so cute. As opposed to like the colored dumbbells that I bet Brad used. Because I think barbells are intimidating for a lot of people.
Yeah, if you're not used to it. Yeah, if you're not familiar with it.
That's enough about
Andrew, did you teach any like practicum in S&C or like when you were doing your master's, did you teach any classes on that stuff?
Yes. I had a couple classes my first year that were like in the gym. What's the word? Is it practical classes? Activity classes is what we called them at OU. Yeah. Like individual fitness was the one that I taught. And then my lecture class, I taught first aid for a couple semesters, which was
it's a common GA class.
Yeah. So a little bit, it was like half lecture, half practical. Like I think every other class we like alternated presenting and then the dummies and then presenting and then on the dummies.
There's a bit in there. There's a bit of that in there too. Like the year and a half I taught at Bryan College, which
Yeah.
is a college for personal trainers. There was a lot of stuff that felt like personal training, you know.
Yeah.
But it wasn't quite personal training. But like personal trainers need to know the experience as well as the being in both roles, you know.
Yeah.
And if they can't perform a squat and a deadlift and a bench press, like I taught technique a lot in Bryan College. We had practical hours every day, so.
Gotcha. So
Or
what we're
2
trying
days
to
a week?
say,
Yeah.
what we're trying to say is we've done both. We obviously still do remote coaching, a lot of it, but then we all have at least a decade of in-person experience working with people, humans, athletes of various sorts. As an athlete, what do you prefer, Eric?
It depends. Like I would be very comfortable. Like if I want to be like, you know what, I would love to see what it's like to work with XYZ person for a bodybuilding prep. That would just be remote. So I was totally fine with, you know, Lane or Berto in the past. For powerlifting, I would say the same thing at this stage. There probably would have been a point in my career where I would have really liked to have had some in-person coaching on the big lifts. And I did get a little bit of that actually back in the day. But when I did Olympic lifting, I sought out Adam Story and had an Olympic lifting coach. And actually before that, Chip Conrad at Body Tribe. So I think things that basically the more you take that slider and you make skill a dominant component of the activity, relative to what you know and have experienced, then I think the more in-person coaching becomes important. Especially in sports where there's more strategy. So I think individual sports are very different than team sports, you know? So, and then like combat sports are an individual sport, but they have a ton of strategies. So that's kind of breaks that rule.
Yeah, I couldn't
I would
imagine
say,
martial arts
yeah.
remotely. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no. So like the stuff where the technique is so incredibly important. Not to say it's not important in bodybuilding. It's probably devalued more than it should be. Because man, you see some bodybuilders do some retarded stuff, and they're worried all about the programming. They're worried about their nutrition. They're worried about all these like high level stuff, and then you're like, wow, you don't even know how to lift. You know, like no wonder there's a problem here. So I think there's value in that for sure. And it's good to get that front loaded for something like bodybuilding or powerlifting in your career. But I think you can definitely, like some of the most successful bodybuilding and powerlifting coaches are online. Like, you know, we've worked with WNBF and IPF world, like top level people, you know, I mean, Cliff Wilson is coach world champs. He's an online coach. Mike Tuchscherer has coached highest level people in powerlifting. So I think it depends on. I think it's sport specific to some degree, and also training age or level specific as well.
Okay, Brad, have you ever been coached in person?
Not really. I wouldn't say, at least not consistently. You know, like if we're ramping up for a powerlifting meet, the owners at the gym in Reno that I train with, who have like 30 years experience in that sport, you know, they'll kind of give me little pointers, and that I really, really appreciate. You know, I kind of go through these phases, you know, as an athlete. Like I've felt here, you know, just recently in the last couple of weeks, you know, like you do with your coach, Andrew, where you tag him, you know, in your Instagram. I started tagging Eric, and here as of late, he's given me some really good feedback, you know, and nothing like super, super dramatic, but just things that he didn't know I was doing, like not really controlling my eccentric, you know, portions of my lift as well as I could. And so I kind of go through these phases where I'm like, wow, that's really good stuff, you know, and I wish I did have a little bit more, you know, hands-on experience. And with the big lifts, you know, a lot of times the coaches over there at the gym at American Iron, you know, they give me small little cues that I don't even think I could spot in like a video. You know, like if I was to send a video to Eric, I think Eric would only be able to pick up on some of the things that they give me if he was standing right in front of me, or maybe even walking around me, and seeing little things that I need to do, cueing of the elbows, keeping your chest up higher, your T-spine a little tighter, things like that. So, yeah, sometimes I wish I did have a little bit more hands-on, and I think sometimes I seek it out, like I'll visit with one of the coaches, or like here recently, I'll tag Eric. But I really go through phases, and I think that definitely is a plus, when you can have that hands-on.
Yeah.
I think the fact that YouTube hasn't killed seminars tells you something, Like, I get asked to speak every year still, and I'm like, that's almost a decade of YouTube being around, and still hasn't, like, I'm more active on social media than I was before. People still think there's value in talking to me in person and getting hands-on practical coaching. So
I think I prefer, I'm sport specific too, but I think, I don't want to say completely though, like bodybuilding wise, I definitely, not only am I like, oh, remote's fine. Like I prefer it, because I couldn't imagine, man, it would be really weird for me to think of a sport right now that I would do that I would actually like want to go in person, because I really like the flexibility of training when I feel good. And so if someone was like, I need you to meet me here at 9 a.m. Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, but like I went to bed late on Sunday night, I'd be like, I don't want to get up. And I mean, I could do it. And I obviously did it for years as an adolescent. But now I think I'm so attached to my training that I would hate. I don't know. I think I would hate that.
it's interesting you say that. So it's mostly logistical reasons, though, because it sounds like if you had this magical in-person coach who would just be there when you wanted to go, that might still work.
Not with bodybuilding, though. Yeah, you're right. I think maybe with like Olympic lifting. I don't know. I've never had it, but I think with bodybuilding, the reason I wouldn't want someone there is not just logistical, but also mental. Like it's a time to think. Like, don't y'all feel that way about your training? Like, this is me time?
Depends.
Does it? Because you train with Barb every day, though.
Yeah, and not like every day, but we've been in a streak for like 4 months where we've been training together.
Yeah.
And I think more differently than the way it's been is that I previously would train in the same time in the same gym with Barb. We'd do different stuff, so it'd be like we're on our own. Mm-hmm. I'd write her program, I'd write mine, and they just wouldn't necessarily overlap. But we both, for different reasons, were like, I want to do a bodybuilding focused split. And there's some minor differences in what we do because we have different weaknesses and strong points and different biomechanical concerns. Like when I squat, she doesn't. And when I do additional benching on lower body day, she doesn't. But for the most part, we're alternating sets. And I find that really useful because I can look up and be like, I thought that was 8.5 RP. What do you think? She'd be like, 9. Like, all right. Or if I'm doing high reps and I'm like, was that 13 or 12? Stuff like that. The occasional time I need a spot, or just kind of like ongoing feedback on technique or how things look. It's not always needed, but it's when it's there, it's nice. And then also sometimes like we push failure a lot on like tiny stuff like cable lateral raises, like a dumbbell pullover, tricep push down, and just having someone be like, let's go, you got this. It's nice to have something not only in your own head that you're saying to yourself to push through, but also to get some external support there. So,
do you think
it's nice to have someone be like, hey man, your delts look huge right now.
You should just hire a little like 15-year-old for that. Just give me compliments every 10 minutes.
I just need a 15-year-old sidekick. I need a Robin. Is what I need. Yeah.
No, but what I hear though is you like a training partner. Would you like your coach there?
Well, I think some of the things that a training partner does, a coach can and often does do.
Okay. Good point.
So there are, I guess there are some elements that I could see being beneficial to having someone in person.
Okay.
And I think there are certain personalities who really value that. So like, for example, I know some very high-level powerlifters who train with other trainers who are high-level powerlifters here in Auckland because they need to be pushed a little harder. That's like their personality thrives on that.
Yeah.
They're a little more social interactee. They're less introspective and introverted.
That's a good point. Like when we were in Australia watching Carl, Jacob, and Sam train together, that was awesome.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
and Joey Zanghini. I was like, wow, I've
Yeah,
never really had that.
and there's like a rich history of that in like barbell sport. Like if you think about the training environment in Gold's Gym that everyone sees in Pumping Iron, or if you think about the West Side Gym and all those guys who would get together and train regularly together. That's a really common thing. Like I've seen in Olympic weightlifting. You have clubs and they get together, and because that's one of those things. It's lifting weights, but it's not something you can. It's a lot harder to do and learn on your own. So you end up coming up in a club environment. So I think there's a lot of value in that, and most powerlifting gyms have sometimes set up like, oh, here's our day where we come in and everyone deadlifts, or you can bench. Like at these times you can come in and train with the crew. And I think, man, like I think about the training sessions I used to get in with Jeff and Berto and Brad when we were all living in California.
That's what I was gonna say. Is when y'all are here, when you guys are here, I love training with you guys. But when you're not here, I don't have someone that. I mean, I have Brandon here, and we train very differently and have for a couple years. And I like you were talking about Brad. I like it. Like if we're both back squatting or something, or he's deadlifting next to the rack where I'm back squatting, like that's always great. But then we always part ways. And I think it might be different, like you said, if like I had people living in this city.
I mean, I think CrossFitters thrive on that. You know, it's a good example. Like CrossFit clubs, when I've experienced that a lot of the times,
boxes.
They have open gym. Yeah, boxes.
If you will.
Yeah. I will do that.
I will do that.
Well, and I know sometimes I thrive just to get. Well, I don't not thrive, but I look forward to my day in Reno when I can train in that environment. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And a lot of times I thrive in that environment. You know, if I'm seeing something that I'm kind of doubting, I will purposely plan that day in Reno. And the percentage of my success is a lot better, you know, when I'm training in that environment. Because I mean, let's face it, when you're the biggest fish in the pond, what reason is there to grow? You know, what reason is there to be any bigger and any badder? But when you take that fish out of that big fish out of that pond, you throw it in the ocean, it's sink or swim. You're either going to get tougher or get faster, and you know, or you're going to eat.
Yeah, that's funny
that's the way I kind of feel.
Point.
Yeah, and I
you
immediately
can use your natural tendency to compare yourself to your own advantage. That's like tactical manipulation of your own psychology.
Exactly. It just to me, it kind of sets me up for success because I know that I'm going to, you know, kind of burn the ships. You know, when I'm there, I'm going to do it. I'm going to die.
I like that.
That's a bit extreme, but you know, that's kind of sometimes my mentality.
Yeah, I think it's funny that my default was like currently right now because of my lifestyle and who's around me and the gym I go to and all that stuff. I prefer training by myself, and that was my first answer. But then I think about when I lived in California and Brandon and Matt and I would train all the time, or we'd meet up with Berto and Mel sometimes or whatever. And it's like, I just forget I'm not around those people. And so I immediately am like, I prefer by myself. It's like, oh wait, there's been times where I don't want to say like I prefer it. I think it's just I don't have like one that's way above the other. If all things are equal, like I have the availability of these people in a gym that I like and blah blah blah. Yeah, all that shit matters. But none of it's a coach. Although Berto was my coach at the time, but it's not like he's sitting there like we've seen people at that same gym in Sacramento that there's a trainer and they follow them on every machine and every set and time their rest and use their clipboard like I'm sure you used to do, Eric and Brad in the gym.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, we've been talking about it from the athlete's perspective.
Yeah.
And I think there's also a lot to talk about from the coach's perspective. Like, I don't know if we want to go there yet, but
we could, yeah, go for it.
Cool. So it was interesting, you know, because Brad was talking about how I've messaged him a few times because he's tagged me in videos on Instagram, and that's influenced my programming for him positively. Like I've made a little note, like if your ass comes up, repeat the set, that kind of thing, or hey, I want you to control the eccentric on like calf raises and seal roast, little stuff like that. And like you can only coach what you're aware of, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that is the biggest potential weakness of online coaching. So if you're an online coach who's worth your salt, you know how to get the variables you need, but you don't always know all the variables you need because you're also, like when you're in person, you can see them for an hour. See them. You see how they move. You see how they act. You can see the way they carry themselves. They're going to talk about more stream of consciousness. When someone reports to you, that goes through their own filter more.
Yeah.
So they're going to report to you what they think is the relevant variables on that, and they will give you they'll report on the structure you allow them. Like there's been a number of times over the years as an online coach where someone will like casually mention something 3 months later what was going on at that time, and I'm like, why didn't you tell me at that time? Like, you know.
And usually their response is, I didn't think it was important, coach.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And, you know, the fact that you were getting 4 hours of sleep, yes, it does matter. And maybe if I saw you for a full hour, I would see you yawning, you know, stuff like that. So I think there is, like, you don't know what you don't know. And there is more that you don't know when you're working with someone online. And when I think of the times when things have gone really well, it's when you have a pretty self-aware athlete, a coach who knows that and who has experience online and knows how to get the correct things in order. And then instead of just going, right, something isn't working, so it's got to be related to the variables that I manipulate, they first go, all right, tell me what's going on in your life. What else could be going on? They ask questions, you know, like instead of like the questions I get online from new online coaches are often, hey, so my client's stalled. Should I do a diet break or cut the calories? And I'm like, maybe you've distilled it down to those are the two final options left. But there should have been a whole lot of questions before that even became the question you asked me. You know, like, are we sure they're tracking accurately? I mean, I come with a million reasons, to be honest. Like, you know, how's your sleep? Are you retaining water? How often do they weigh in? But so I think there is more you can potentially mess up as an online coach.
I think I would agree, but I don't think I want to be there for every session. Like, I think in a perfect world, if I'm thinking, okay, me and my bodybuilding athlete, it'd be like we do weekly check-ins the way we do now for 3DMJ, and maybe once every like 2 months, I get to see them in person and watch a workout. Because I think every day they almost would become reliant on it.
It's overkill. It's just not needed. I would agree. Like with a bodybuilder, like so much of the time, it's just status quo. You know, like go in there,
do your curl,
do your sets, do your exercises, do them right, hit target RPEs, progress load when you can, hit your macros, get your sleep. Let me know how it's going.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that. But I think there's more you can miss. Not that it would be better to be in person per se.
Yeah, for sure. And like, I'm trying to think too of all the athletes I've had on my roster the past couple years. I think it was only like 2 I've met in person, right? And it makes me think of in Sacramento when Denise was there. I mean, we totally redid her back squat, and I thought, you know, because she's been, I think she's a personal trainer. She's been lifting for a long time, but there was some mobility issues that I wouldn't have known unless we were in person. I could see her from the front. Not that she wouldn't send me videos, but they were really from the side. And like you were saying, Brett, like and you would think mechanically the side is very important in like a diagonal, but I had never specifically said I want you to show me your squat from the front, you know. But then she came to our seminar and we had that session, the practical session, and I got to see her and we did some stuff. So
yeah, and you didn't know what you didn't know to ask to say, hey, can I see a video from the front?
Yeah.
But being in person in actual 3-dimensional space, you know, it's hard not to see it if you have a decent eye and awareness of that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think there are some things that would be nice to. They're not the norm, and I think if there's any sports that lend themselves towards on remote coaching, it's bodybuilding first and powerlifting second, I would say. Yeah.
I agree. And then there's also so much of it is beyond the training with bodybuilding prep, right? Like I'm not going to cook for you. I'm not going to watch you do 45 minutes on the elliptical kind of thing. So why would you?
And on the flip side, but on the same kind of note as that, so much of the work someone might need a coach to help them with um, is psychological or mentally tactical,
Decision making.
and that decision
Scheduling.
making, reformatting a perspective, you know, um, reassurance, giving them, especially for first time competitors, letting them know what's normal and what's not, like all that stuff. It can totally be done online. There's no reason why not.
I'd say it's better.
I think sometimes, because I think learning to wait until your check-in to address some of that lets you realize that not everything's an emergency, which I think is actually a huge positive. So.
I think another positive would be like they're by themselves, right? So if I'm trying to think about the check-ins and the things that I need to know, like you said, are often very personal and vulnerable. And if I'm in the gym with you, you might not be comfortable telling me some things because you're in public or because other people are around or whatever. And man, if you've never coached someone or made your own YouTube videos, being alone in a room with a camera is so revealing, and it feels so. I don't know how to explain it, but I've had a lot of athletes be like, okay, or like they're sitting in their car because they can't even go in their house to record because they feel like this is so personal and this is like me and you. And I don't know. Elaborate on that, Eric. You're gonna say something, but don't y'all agree that there's some people that?
No, I was just echoing. I totally agree.
It's easy to pour your heart out when you're just sitting there talking to your camera because it's almost like meditation in a way. There's not really a person there, and you know, I kind of sometimes relate it to praying in a way. You know, I'm just pouring my heart out, and then you realize after you're all done, you're like, oh wow, I actually have to send that to somebody. You know what I mean? And when you're in the moment, you kind of forget that it is actually somebody that's going to be listening. And so yeah, I think myself. That's why we've kind of mentioned in other podcasts. I kind of insist on a blog sometimes. You know, I want to see your facial expressions. I want to, you know, hear the changes in your voice and just kind of have you get lost, you know, in the experience of just making a blog.
And it's uninterrupted.
That's it exactly. Even when someone is a good listener and they're just sitting there listening to you, when you're being vulnerable and expressing things that you have doubt about, regret, embarrassment, judgment, self-judgment, judgment towards others or whatever, or the process, as soon as you say something, the human in you is looking to see how does the other person react. Like, are they going to take this well? Should I moderate this message? Should I turn it up? Should I re-clarify? Do they get it? But when you're just talking to a camera, you just have to kind of go. And there are ups and downsides to that. You know, I think, man, you know the feeling I hate the most in online coaching is where I'm going through a tough patch with a client, like they're unhappy, or equally frustrating is when they don't know anything's wrong, and I think there's a huge issue, and I say something that I know is gonna be hard for them to hear, and then I have to wait for them to respond, like that waiting period, either when when I have to see how they're gonna respond to me feeling like I'm in trouble, like I dropped the ball as a coach, or them feeling like, or me knowing that they're going to feel like they're in trouble for dropping the ball as a client. That gets addressed immediately when you're talking to someone. Yeah. You know, if it's a healthy communicative, you know, situation. But with online coaching, you're going to have to wait until they decide to get back to you. You know.
Yeah. And I'd say the last few minutes of those worries, or not worries, tend to outweigh the things that people would think in person helps. Like, again, like the forum, like you're right. It could be, it's rare that someone knows enough about lifting, seeks us out, hires us, and their lifting is like complete shit across the board. Like that's, we're lucky enough, right? I think it'd be different if it was Gen Pop, right? Which I think you mentioned earlier, absolutely. Like the better you get, or the more advanced you are as an athlete, or the more experienced you are in a gym, the less important an in-person.
Yeah, or the least frequency you need, or the less constant feedback. Exactly. So many things become more automatic. And, you know, kind of going back to what I was saying about that delay, that's actually positive around emotionally charged stuff because you get a chance to think about it. Like, I can't tell you how many times I have written an email, deleted it, written it again, deleted it, and written it a third time to keep removing, like, there's apparent judgment in this, and I'm annoyed with you. Okay, now I just sound a little judgy in like the subtext. Oh, this one sounds clean. I'm just responding to this very very like sanitized, and I'm just it's all about business, and I've got the element of compassion, the element of reality. This is perfect. Send it. But like I've done 2 takes on videos and 2 takes on emails many times, and I'm thinking about like, what if we were in person? Like, maybe I do better when someone's with me because then I'm seeing their humanities. Yeah.
You do.
Having me had to apologize to you multiple times for times. With everyone in my life, anytime I feel like I was overly harsh, I apologize later. But
I don't think I've ever needed it either. When I think about it, I've never I can't think of anything you've apologized to me for that I'm like, yeah, it's okay. It was pretty bad. Maybe, okay, I lied. One thing. There's one thing. But of all the other things, like you apologize, and I'm like, I don't even know what you're talking about, dude. Like, it was like so not a big deal.
But that is a nice thing of remote coaching is that there is no, at least if you're aware of it, you don't have to take stuff back. You know what I mean? Because I'm like Eric. I've had to do repeats, and I'll be like, I am so glad that I'm able to re-record this instead of having that come out one-on-one with the person. You know what I mean? Because, how many times do we say stuff like that? Man, I wish I could take that back. Well, that's the one nice thing about remote coaching is you can take it back. You can hit delete and then re-record the thing and make it better.
It's an opportunity for you to vent. And so I think that's, like Andrea said, you can adjust in the moment. You can see how they feel. That you're not talking to a version of them in your head that you're imagining, that is the personification of the part that you're frustrated about. You're talking to the whole person, so you can see like, oh no, that actually this is true, blah blah blah, or whatever.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And the I think the gym environment has a lot to do with it, because when you think about the stuff that we say to our clients, we wouldn't say it there either. Like the conversations that we need to have as competitive bodybuilding coaches. Anyways.
Well, and not just what we say, but kind of like what we do. Like one of the things that I really want to discuss is just posing, for example. Posing instruction. I really prefer doing, making the posing instruction via vlog, via video.
Oh, do you?
I do. I love it. And the reason I do is that, number one, I don't have to be self-conscious about standing there all goofy in the middle of the gym teaching somebody how to do a side symmetry, how to do a side chest. I'm just in my own world right here. I just prop up the camera, hit record. Okay, here's what you want to do, And I mean, let's face it. How many guys are going to go, okay, what you want to do is you got to stick out your butt.
I'm the opposite.
That leg,
bikini competitors.
Yeah.
Oh, when you're doing a bikini.
Yeah, I don't have any problem, coaching somebody on a bikini pose. In a gym, oh man, I think I would have trouble. I would have trouble doing that, in the gym. But yeah, I can literally like, and it's with posing, it's not, in my opinion, it's not quite so critical that I see all angles all the way around the person like in a lift. You know what I mean? I can show them different ways in instruction. If I want them to scoot their hips back on a symmetry pose to make the hips look smaller, here's what it looks like from the front. Here's what it looks like from the side. I actually feel like I can do a better job coaching somebody up on posing with, remote coaching, not only because I don't have to feel self-conscious about being in the gym, showing somebody how to stick their butt out and get their hips twisted to accentuate the S curve, but I can show a person multiple angles, kind of over and over again and show them what it is that, the judges are looking for on stage. I can take my camera and I can put it down and I can say, look, this is how the judges see you. They see you down here like this, as they're looking up to you. And so you can kind of get perception of the eye, that's sometimes missed one-on-one. Like if I demonstrate, for example, that my hands are the same size, to make this hand look smaller, all I got to do is just move it back. And you guys that are not watching this can't see this, but it's pretty obvious in a camera, I'm shrinking my hand. I'm taking advantage of that. And you might miss that being one-on-one in front of somebody. They might not be able to visualize that because it's kind of more 3D and you kind of get the whole context of everything going on. So I personally, I think myself, remote coaching is almost kind of better when it comes to coaching up somebody posing wise. And it shows a lot of times, you know, when
I'm
you
the
see
opposite.
videos of folks, they sent over their video of their
Mhm.
competition. I'm like, wow, they are so much better than, you know, the people that are punching the judges on their side symmetry pose.
That's so funny that you feel so strongly, because that's the one thing that I'm like really opposite of you. I would much rather be in person with posing.
I'm both. Like, I really value the system I have for coaching posing online, where each week first we'll start with just the symmetry round. Then I'll work on 1 to 2 poses. I'll give you 3 corrections. I can draw on a picture of you to highlight stuff. Like, I can be very intentional, systematic, and specific through online coaching. However, every time we've done a seminar, I've been able to teach someone what I can teach in 12 check-ins in 1 hour. So I find it so much more efficient to be there in person with someone, although it's a little less structured. And sometimes I wonder, like, can they actually absorb? Like, I got you looking good at the end of this hour, but can you absorb all that? You know?
Yeah. So it's not
There's
that
trade-offs there.
Yeah. I mean, obviously we can do it over video, and we do for the most part, because I was telling you all that I've only met my clients in person a couple times, but I would much rather do it in person, because I can touch them, not in like a weird way, but I don't know if that comes from my gymnastics also, but like I can place their elbow and pull their hips.
I like how you clarified that, not in a weird way. Like,
well, I forget where it was.
You know, like I can just like grab their ass, because, you know.
I think it was at one of our seminars, maybe. I don't know where it was. It was like in the last year or two that I like walked up to someone. I was like, "Do you mind if I touch you?" And they're like, "What?" And I'm like, "Because I'm just used to." You know what I mean? I mean, she's just going in there with the chat. Like, oh wow, that's
going in with the kids.
But like I said, you see these little girls every day. Children. I know, and you spot them and you're in charge of catching them, however, and you know, whatever. And so with adults, I'm always like, is it okay if I touch you? Because like there's certain pulls and pushes, and like, I don't know. I prefer touching someone, or if they can't like visually see it, or and then recording the posing session. Like a lot of people do it at theirs.
Yeah.
And oh god,
like, that's critical. If you get a whole lot of work done at a seminar or in person with someone in like an hour, record it, because you're going to remember 3 pieces of that, and they're going to give you a ton of good information.
And I think this matters less with dudes, but for girls, like, I am such a, like, the walk, and it just is such a big deal to me, and it's so, in my opinion,
it's part of your posing.
Yeah, for figure and for bikini, I'm like, oh god, we got to work on it. And that sometimes it's not, doesn't translate well in the video, or like if they set up their camera to show you posing, but they're walking from over there, you can see like their last 2 steps. So like I'm real big on walks and transitions for the females too, and it's easier to do that if I'm, you know, there with them.
Yeah, there's a lot of good stuff.
And there again, I can demonstrate the walk very comfortably sitting here, you know, in my dining room.
I think we need to put videos of this in our group chat. I'm going to need to see Brad doing a bikini walk.
Do you put on heels, Brad? That's my question.
No.
It makes a big difference. There are a lot of girls that you see them, they turn in posing videos without heels. They put them on, and I'm like, oh my goodness.
Well, and how many times, Andrea, have you seen their walk and their posing actually improve in heels? I have seen that.
Oh yeah, I think it's
I'll be like, you know what? We need to see you in heels and see what you look like. Boom, things are fixed.
Yeah. That's so funny. It hurts your feet more, but it definitely improves lines, and it like makes you do the booty out, chest up thing a little bit better. Okay. For powerlifting, what are some things that come out as like big giant differences or changes of opinion?
You know what?
You just have to get video with powerlifting. Like that's video of lifts is super important.
How
And
often
I like to
for
see
you?
I like to see the heaviest lifts every week in an ideal situation,
Really?
especially with someone who's new. Yeah.
Oh, well.
Especially like in the last 6 weeks. Like the last 6 weeks, I'll pretty much tell them right there in their protocol, film this set, film that set, you know. So yeah, I agree there, especially those heavy grinders reveal a lot.
Form wise, effort, like when you say the last 6 weeks, are you paying attention? I'm not paying attention. You're paying attention to everything, but do you find that the things that come out to you are in form that you're looking for, or more like an effort miscalculation? I don't know if I'm asking that
Both.
right. I know you're looking for both, but is there one that you like? Is there something that you commonly see more than others?
So the grinders are they let you know what are they actually probably capable of. So that informs attempt selection. It informs you their own perception of RPE, which may or may not be accurate. And if there's going to be form breakdown that persists through heavy loads, that can be indicative to things that need to be addressed technically, or perhaps are weaknesses that should be tried to be worked on in some manner. So I think there's just a lot, like Brad said, they're very revealing in a number of ways.
Yeah, because how many times do we see, form breakdown in the early repetitions of even like a 5 or 6 rep set? And usually the first, 3 or 4 reps are perfect, and you don't really see things break down until RPE gets very high on those last couple of repetitions. Mm-hmm. Imagine that times 10 when that's the only repetition that you get to see, and so, yeah, it really reveals a lot of things, like sometimes we can pick out little easy kind of cues that can be fixed in the last few weeks, by just saying, okay, when it starts to get really, really heavy at that particular portion, I want you to think about opening up the knees, just little things like that. You can see their sticking points and give them little cues that can sometimes help. And yeah, that's why a lot of times
when they go heavy because they're nervous. So you can tell right there, they're unsure of their heavy loads, so we need to figure out a way to get them into the process and less out of thinking about how much weight's on the bar. Mm-hmm. It's a lot that comes out of those limit lifts.
And like Eric said, like it's perceived exertion is going to help you with your attempt selection. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's in my opinion, it's almost maybe not mandatory. Maybe if it's a first time competitor, maybe you don't have to see it, but boy, it sure does make it nice when you can say, okay, well, normally under normal circumstances, I say use this load because you've easily got that for a triple, Mm-hmm. Whereas, it can be deceiving in a more experienced lifter.
I'll say it's mandatory. I'll go ahead and I'll put that out there. Like if you're working with a powerlifter online and they go into a comp and you've never seen them lift, and unless you're also having them work with an in-person like technique coach, like that's an issue.
Yeah, I was gonna say I had a lady. I say lady, she's early 20s. I almost said girl, but she's not a girl either. An athlete who was wanted to eventually compete in powerlifting, and we would do videos once a month because she didn't have like a meet upcoming or anytime soon. But there was a powerlifting coach at her gym that she would once, I think she did a couple sessions with her, like just an hour, and she'd report back to me and say, she says I need to work on da-da-da-da-da, here's my video, da-da-da, and I would like usually agree or be like, and a thing that helps me with this is, but I was super grateful that she was willing to do that. Yeah. Like when she said, do you care? And I was like, oh my God, please go ahead, do mm-hmm. some stuff because I'm not there.
Well, we used to encourage that.
Yeah.
Like right now we have kind of like a, hey, too many cooks in the kitchen. Sometimes like we don't want to work with multiple coaches.
Yeah, it depends what the issue is though, right?
Yeah, but man, back in like 2010, like sending videos was hard. Mm-hmm. Like recording and uploading a video. Not everybody's phone had that. Some people are still playing Snake on their phone and shit, you know, and YouTube did not have fast upload speeds. So getting videos of lifters was not easy until like 2011, 2012.
Yeah.
And so prior to that, there's probably a 2-year period where if we were working with a power lifter, we would actively encourage them to try to get someone who could help them in person.
Yeah. I still thought with posing though too. Like even
yeah,
though
we still do. Yeah, nothing wrong with that. Especially if they're not a division I'm as good with. So like if they're anything besides a bodybuilder, I'll often encourage them to get outside in-person help.
Yeah.
Not that I won't do the Tia walk in my room like Brad, but I'm just not.
In your heels.
Yeah. Well, if I happen to be wearing them, which is pretty common. Yeah.
I was gonna say, but yeah, the too many cooks in the kitchen thing. I think when it comes to game planning, nutrition, like nothing's worse than when you've been working with an athlete and they're like, well, so and so at the gym said, I'm like, oh my god, no. Mm-hmm. Well, so and so looks good, and she's been low carb for this long, and like, so maybe we should. I'm like, oh, please stop, please.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, programming things like that. I think too many cooks in the kitchen can happen very, very quickly.
Yeah.
You know, I think for posing things like that, yeah, probably the more feedback that you can get, the better, especially on things that I've never walked on stage as either a figure competitor or a bikini competitor.
I'd like to see it.
So
there's time yet left in your life.
But yeah, I mean, please do, outsource and go see individuals, in your area for that. But yeah, for that same reason, gosh, it's so frustrating when you hear, competitors saying, gosh, everybody's wearing the what's that thing called? The squeegee thingy. The squeam.
What?
Why aren't I using the squeam
when
the girls?
Corset.
Oh my.
Yeah. When all the other girls that are being coached are wearing the squeam, and even programming things like, here recently the one dude was lifting with chains, and we're only two weeks out from a meet, and I'm just like, yeah, you're not them, I'm not that coach, and I'll give them reasons. Obviously, I'm not just going to say do what I say.
Yeah.
We're going to say things like, what, we need to be pretty sport specific right now. We need to be doing the lifts that you're going to be doing on the platform, and you're not using chains on the platform. And so I think programming things like that, too many cooks in the kitchen, can happen very, very fast.
Well, I do appreciate the ask though, rather than just doing, because nothing's worse than being like, I started doing that 4 weeks ago, and I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah.
I agree with you, Brad. It's typically useful when it's not something related to shiny object syndrome, but like posing coaching, technique coaching, that's often not what people are looking to see. The grass is always greener. Like, oh, I don't know, I think I should turn my knees out. Like that's not it. Like people are always looking at some new radical diet or supplement or training program or what have you versus mastering their skills. So yeah.
Yeah. Should we go beyond bodybuilding and powerlifting? Yeah.
How far beyond shall we go?
I mean, just Olympic lifting, which you said you had to do.
That's about as far as I can go.
In person. Yeah. Well, but I'm trying to think we do have athletes. We say athletes all the time, but we have people that aren't competitors.
Yes. I have done some limited programming for an Olympic lifter or two, but every time I tell them I want you to train with someone who can give you feedback. And I've definitely done like nutrition for an Olympic lifter, but I don't touch their training at all, except for knowing what's going on to appropriately give them nutrition. But Andrea, how does your coach work with form stuff? Do you send videos?
Okay, so I got to him, I was completely like from scratch, and we did it via video for a while, but I was training at a CrossFit gym, and there were actually a few pretty good competitors there, and so I think I'm pretty lucky in that because of my background in gymnastics, I could get into those positions And I think because of my coaching background, me videoing myself, comparing it to the people I saw on the internet, sending it to coach, comparing it to people in the gym, like it was this whole like from multiple angles process. And then with Olympic lifting, for those who've never done it, there's some things that you will not understand until you feel them. It's very strange. Like there's a lot of
timing.
Yeah, there's pulling involved. Like there's like when you feel the bar pulling out of your hand, like it's sort of like a deadlift, but it's at your thigh level, so it's kind of weird, like on a clean. So there's just some things that no matter what I did, there's time involved too. So it was like this storm of 6 different resources. And I think the most valuable thing about my coach and sending him videos or whatever is that the programming reflected my improvements in them. So although in a perfect world, I think most people would get an Olympic lifting coach right off the bat and see them in person, and whoever sees you in person do your programming.
Yeah.
Like what do what I say, not what I do.
You can't program in a vacuum. Like you can't program Olympic lifting in a vacuum. Like you can't just assume, and all snatches and clean and jerks were done properly, and they know how to do snatch balance, and they know. But
I mean, there's online
pulls.
programs. Well, that's a thing too, right? As coach I would get sent a shit ton of videos the first few months because I had no, I learned what a snatch was on the internet, and I learned what a clean and jerk, but I didn't know, like you said, snatch balance, snatch pull, segment snatch from riser, So I would get sent a lot of videos as to like what these exercises even are. It was a lot of that. I couldn't imagine that 10 years ago, but luckily because of how we live right now, there was a lot of me at the computer for my coaching. And then it was daily correspondence, not weekly like we do with our powerlifters and bodybuilders. And then you have to, the stretching, the positioning. Like I couldn't imagine if I was unable to sit like that. Like the hardest thing for me was the front rack because my elbows and stuff at first, but I couldn't really mess that up that bad. But it's unfortunate, not unfortunate, I don't want to sound shitty, but we've talked about it lightly too, that if you go to CrossFit classes to learn Olympic lifting with the aim of actually competing in Olympic lifting, you're not going to probably learn it correctly.
It's not the best option.
Yeah. Typically, you're going to be allowed to do snatches before you can hold an overhead position.
Yeah, exactly.
Just as an example, like those are the kinds of things that could occur. So I think it's like progression matters more. Whereas again, we've talked about bodybuilding, like I don't think you're going to mess up a curl too bad that it's dangerous. Whereas you could with some of the other Olympic lifting positions.
Or just ingrain a habit in that limits your ability to be strong.
Yeah. And
then have to relearn that after a year of doing it incorrectly,
Well, I think I
see that's pretty common in Olympic lifting.
Yeah, something that's a common thread in what we've said is because it is so easy, I think we could and should all be filming ourselves pretty often for our own records in all these sports when you don't have a coach with you. Or when you do, the posing like we said. Or if you do like a 1 hour with a powerlifting coach at your gym once a month or something.
Yeah, and just talking about, remote coaching versus in-person coaching in sports outside of bodybuilding and powerlifting, I've kind of generated and created this whole system of training for my son, who's a football player.
Yeah.
And boy, I think if he wasn't here living under my roof, how much context I would be missing,
Yeah.
And how difficult that would be. I mean, I think, if I was to do some sort of strength and conditioning program for, a performance athlete or a team athlete like that, I feel like at some point I would just have to hand it off. I would just have to say, okay, I feel like that now, to a certain extent. There's going to be a certain point where I'm just going to hand it off. I'm just going to have to say, look, I can't possibly coach him in this skill or that skill or improve him in, this way as far as explosive speed goes and et cetera, et cetera. I don't know how I would do that, remotely, so,
Yeah,
I mean, a good example is just the other day he went out playing and his back was sore. There's no way I could have gotten that, through remote coaching. Just someone who went out on a hike and they come back and back is sore, doing squats. Oh, well, maybe I need to change our volume on squats, and the person probably wouldn't have thought to tell me, oh yeah, I went out for a quick hike the other day. Sometimes those things escape and you miss that important about a context.
Yeah. Speaking of context, I think what we've talked about a lot, right, is the strength sports that don't have the I mean, when you add a speed element like exploding, there's a and like you like sprinting or whatever, it gets a lot more dangerous. Like the risk is just like crazy because a lot of people don't know how to jump. A lot of people don't know how to run properly. A lot of like the difference between with strength and conditioning and like our sports that we typically talk about in this podcast is very real. And I think a lot of personal trainers of Gen Pop try to do this is just an observation that kind of blows my mind a little bit, like Gold or 24 or whatever, when I see them. Maybe as a personal trainer, I was also a college athlete or something, and I'm asking this person to do one-legged something or another, balances or jump, stuff that looks very S&C like a performance athlete. That if you are an athlete, I think you'd be surprised by like what most, like the average population
can and can't do.
Yeah, it's a little scary.
Yeah. But yeah, I think it's an important distinction. Like, a team sport like football is a open skill sport. So the way you're going to run, move, and the decisions you're going to make on the field are dependent on the opponent and the conditions. Yeah. And powerlifting is a closed skill sport. And then even on top of that, football is multiple energy systems that you may or may not be using at given times, depending on how long a play lasts, what position you play, whether you're playing defense and offense, etc. And powerlifting is still the same, So you have to have multiple components of athleticism and then also be able to react more in terms of programming because the player has to react more in terms of play. So that makes online coaching for a team sport like that a little more difficult, I would say, for sure. Probably more than a little, which I think makes sense where Brad's perspective is coming from.
So we say like we say how hard bodybuilding coaching is, but it's more the human aspect of it. Because like we said, training wise, we do have a much easier training and programming wise. Much, I don't say easier. It's more straightforward.
Well, yeah, no, it's easier.
Okay,
yeah.
I can say that.
Much
it is.
better,
It's like so much easier than most other sports, but our that's just in the physical though. But the mental, emotional, like the lifestyle part of it, yeah, it's heavy. Different skill set.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right. Did we miss anything in comparing remote and in-person across different sports also?
I think go ahead, Brett.
Well, I was just going to say a couple just minute things that we missed, just things that we miss in remote coaching. Again, kind of getting all the context and what we kind of talked about before, it's deceiving sometimes just people's height. I know that, here recently, I just learned that an athlete that I thought was pretty tall is not. They're very, very short, and you can't, you really, we see the application, and we see, okay, yeah, person's pretty short. They're 5'4", but then you see them in person and you're like, wow, they're barely 5'4". They are a lot smaller, than I even imagined.
And tell me why that matters.
Well, it's just, you see people, how they lift in a certain way and you're like, they should be better at that, than they are, or why are they so darn good at that when they really shouldn't be? And you've got this picture in your mind of this long person with long levers, and you're like, gosh, they're a lot better at that than I anticipated. Well, it's because they don't have long levers. They're actually shorter than you anticipated,
That's funny.
and vice versa, and vice versa. Sometimes it I don't know, it's just deceiving, and thoughts and influences that I have in my mind, I might not have if I actually saw that person and realized, oh my gosh, you are not nearly as tall as I thought,
I can always see it in their videos in comparison to the barbell, because it's like standard. So like if, you know what I mean? Like if someone's doing a sumo and their toes are like on the plates, I'm like, oh, this isn't, I don't know. Like I, just in the back of my head, relate them to the barbell all the time.
Some kind of reference.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and see, that's exactly kind of what I'm talking about. You think, wow, that must be a pretty tall person if their toes are against the plates. Well, you know what? They're 5'3" and they're super, super flexible. And then when you see their deadlift from the side, their body like straight up and down. They've got, such good levers. And it's things like that it'd be like, why are they so good at that when they really should be, or shouldn't be?
Okay.
Like, for example, I was just back watching the Grand Prix from the Arnold last year, and you see some of these guys with the bar on their shoulders, and you're like, is that a regulation bar? That doesn't look like a 7 foot. Well, no, it is. It's just a dude's shoulders are 5 feet wide. It's very, very deceiving. And where was I going? One other thing I was going to mention. Oh, kind of out of the realm of bodybuilding and powerlifting. One time I was asked to go be a trainer at a football game, and I was cold. I walked into it cold. Their trainer was gone, and so it was either me or nobody.
They're coaching you?
And no, just for first aid type purposes, in case a person got injured, tape ankles, And I would much rather these athletes have somebody than have nobody, right? So I showed up to this event cold. And so naturally, I'm seeing these people move around for the first time, like, oh, wait, so-and-so looks like they're limping. Do I need to address that? Oh, no, don't worry about it. She walks like that all the time. That's the kind of thing that it really would have been, kind of nice to know, is that that's their gait. That's how they walk. That can be interpreted as a limp. So I don't know where I'm going with that, but that's the kind of concept you miss in remote coaching.
Well, it made me think, and what I thought you were going to... I don't know. What I thought you were going to say, and it made me think about, was like warm-up procedures. And because I remember I told y'all on, I think, another podcast or one of our meetings that like one of my athletes was doing like 3 times more reps than I thought he should have been doing to get to his working sets, And I don't know how it came up in conversation, but if it didn't come up, I wouldn't have known to ask.
Yeah, the things you won't see that you assume are in place, like rest periods, appropriate warm-ups.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. What were you going to say, Eric, before Brad started?
I was just going to say that from an athlete perspective, don't necessarily think of it as black and white. Should I get an in-person coach or an online coach? Think about what are some of the things I like about either, and how can I get the best of both worlds? So, for example, you might have a trusted workout partner, opposing coach, and then you have an online coach. So you get the motivation, you get someone to help you push, you get someone to lift you up when you're a little tired during prep, you get someone who's making sure you're posing correctly. The person you train with is good with form, so all that stuff's in order, and you get all the benefits of online coaching. Like, you don't have to necessarily sacrifice it or say, hey, no, I don't want an online coach because I need someone to help me with my I need motivation in person, or whatever. Like, I think look at the pros and cons of each resource and figure out what you can do without creating a too many cooks in the kitchen situation to where it will become detrimental to you.
That's a good point. Like, maybe 2-3 times a year, because you have no one, like maybe you're the only powerlifter in your town of Portola, California. But maybe if you can afford it, you go to 2 or 3 seminars a year where there's a in-person.
Absolutely.
And some people too, like you said, there's a lot of one-off appointments. Like, we get contacted sometime by someone who just wants their lifts looked at. And like you said, just a posing coach, like, I'm a remote coach, but is there a local posing person? Actually, and like Brad, I have an athlete who lives by Brad, and he did posing with her. I'm trying to think of what else. Like, when I had my coach, there was an Olympic lifting class at the CrossFit gym I went to, and I went to it a couple times. I also had Eric in person in Australia to look at my snatches when I was first learning them. So that's a good way to look at it. And a lot of online coaches, I think, would be happy to have you ask, like, do you know anyone in my area who X or whatever? And like an important team actually for me the past couple of years was my physio and my coach. Because of all the things I was doing, it's like, okay, doctor said I can do this, I can't do this for 2 weeks at a time, and he would adjust accordingly.
I did that with Luke Johnson during his prep. He had a PT he was working with who was helping him with some injuries that we had, and was able to do some more in-person assessments. And I got to meet him when I went out for a seminar, and
cool.
also see how Luke was doing when Mike and I talked there, and that was really useful. And like I was able to coach up Luke on his posing, which we actually used as part of the academy module. So it was there's little stuff like that can be very, very helpful during a prep for sure.
One, if I think about a lot of high-level athletes, regardless of their sport, they usually do have a few people, that they have.
They got a picture,
but
their support staff.
Yeah,
exactly. But at the same time, they're certainly not. They're not hopping from coach to coach to coach. They may have 3 or 4 coaches, but those 3 or 4 coaches have been pretty intimate with that athlete for a really, really long time. So, I think that's kind of.
For the listeners, Eric's cat is attacking his headphones currently,
which is actually kind of funny. But my point is that a lot of athletes they have a few different resources, and it could be a combination of online and in person, remote coaching and in person, and sometimes those individuals have been pretty intimate with that athlete for a long time.
Yeah. As long as everyone knows their role, right? And there's open communication with everyone. Because like you said, I just watched I was at my dad's this weekend, and we watched the Conor McGregor documentary on Netflix, which will make you want to go train if you watch it, just saying. But yeah, same thing. Like there's a sparring coach, there's a boxing coach, there's a jiu-jitsu coach, there's the guy who makes his food, there's the head coach. There's the guy,
and you hear all the time how sometimes those athletes coach retires, and now they have to go find a new boxing coach or a new grappling coach or whatever. And it almost always has a big impact on the athlete and their performance.
Not that you need all that for bodybuilding and powerlifting, but it's the principle.
To be fair, though, we've set up similar things with 3DMJ. Like we have an RD, we have Amanda, who we might contact if someone's struggling with the mental side of things, Back in the day, we used to have everyone go to Jeff for posing. And then that became logistically untenable. But
specialists.
Yeah. Nothing wrong with that.
Cool. Well, guys, I think we helped.
Yay.
Woo-hoo.
Hey, everybody. It's Eric Helms. Thanks for tuning into our podcast. As you know, at 3DMJ, we promote evidence-based approaches to the lifting community. If that's something you want to dive deeper into, I'd encourage you to check out my research review, Monthly Applications in Strength Sport, or for short, MASS. This is a review that myself, Dr. Mike Zerdos, and Greg Knuckles put out every month. We cover the latest research publications that are applicable to strength and physique athletes, or anyone who's looking to get stronger or improve their body comp. Our content is in both written and video format. For more information on how to subscribe, check out 3dmusclejourney.com/mass. That's 3dmusclejourney.com/MASS for further details. Thanks for tuning in.